What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Tonight I wanted to talk about a rarity, and that is Gottlieb's 1947 New Daily Races. Now, New Daily Races is kind of unique in a historical perspective because, as far as I know, it's the only horse race theme payout pinball machine that Gottlieb made after World War II. It came out again in 1947 in January of that year, and it was quite a bit different from Bally's horse race games of the 1940s to 1950s, but it had a similar goal in that it paid you out. Now, for those of you who subscribe to the Mr. Pinball Classifieds list, you may have seen Gottlieb's New Daily Races advertised on there recently from a gentleman in Ohio for $600. He mentioned that there were a couple things missing, and I sent him a question as to what those were, and he sent me back quite a few photos, and I've got to say that the photos that he sent were very illuminating. So I'm going to post a couple to the Facebook/Instagram feed, and hopefully you all get to share a bit in what I've seen here. A few interesting things to note. The first being that the serial number, someone has taken actually a stamp and stamped it all over the playfield. That should clean up very easily. I'm not quite certain why someone did that, because the serial number should be stamped into the playfield itself, not just on it. And it's printed all over the place. So there must have been some interesting local regulation that caused that to happen, or problem that the operator ran into, and I'd love to know what that was. That said, beyond that, the game is photographed with a schematic and a manual, and what's interesting to me is that the manual shows that it's the payout version. And that means that they also produced a version of this game that paid off in replays instead of in payout. Now, the interesting thing about a payout game is that you get immediate gratification. You get the money right then. You don't have to work it like the bingos with a payout hopper installed where it just jumps off the replay reset circuit and shoots you out some nickels. This pays off immediately. So it's pretty interesting and different. The other thing that's interesting about this is that there are multiple adjustments, and the mechanisms are truly fascinating inside of this game. So, for example, one of the adjustments is you can convert it from 1 ball to 5 ball. 4 of them would be trapped, leaving the 5th one to go down the playfield. Now let's talk a bit about the mechanisms inside. You have a couple of steppers in the back of the head, along with several smaller stepper units. And then in the body, down below in the back, there are multiple relays. And on the bottom, you have the control unit. Now, this control unit looks awfully familiar to anybody who's looked inside a bingo. In fact, it looks almost exactly like Bally's design. It's pretty fascinating, actually, because they have a search disc that operates exactly like Bally's horse race search discs, and their bingo search discs as well. And then you've got a set of multiple cams tied to a motor. Now, let's talk about gameplay. On IPDB, the score and instruction card happens to be, there's a scan of it or an image of it up there, and it talks about how to win. Now, the horse race games, the idea is they're multi-coin machines, and you put in some number of coins, and it's going to light a horse. It's going to pick a horse for you, and then you have to steer the ball into win, place, or show. And in some games, you can pick win, place, or show. In other games, it tells you what to shoot for, I suppose. Now, I've never played a horse race game, so there is that caveat. But this appears to operate quite differently. The first is that you want to look for a lit pocket. So similarly to later games with gobble holes that can be lit, apparently some of the trap holes in this game could be lit. And if you land in the lit pocket, you'll automatically receive win, place, show, or purse awards indicated. The odds, and this game does have advancing odds, are multiplied by the number of coins played up to 4. So if you put in 4 coins, it will put the odds at max every time. Beyond that, there's a sequence. There are 4 passive bumpers on the playfield, labeled A, B, C, and D, and if you hit them all, then you can put in another coin to get all of the special selections. Those are the features on this game. Now you have to do that before you raise your next ball, because apparently that resets the sequence. So my thought is that either it resets that sequence at every ball lift, or it resets the sequence every time that the sequence is completed. Either way, that's a pretty powerful feature. Obviously, it's more easy to do if it only resets after the sequence has been completed. But my guess is that's tied mechanically and not electrically. So I'm thinking that it does it on every ball lift. Now, there's a name feature, and the scorecard describes this as putting a ball in paddock 1 or paddock 2 at the bottom of the playfield when that feature is lit, lights the next letter of the name, and awards 4-to-1 odds for each coin played, and upon completion of name, awards 40-to-1 odds for each coin played. That's pretty powerful. 4-to-1 is, nothing to sneeze at necessarily. But if you play the max of 4 coins with 40-to-1 odds, that's 40 times 4. That's quite a bit. Now, there's also what they call the special feature, and that is when lit, if you hit special, you'll receive 40-to-1 odds for each coin played. So there's quite a few interesting payout things going on this game. So let's talk about artwork. The cabinet itself is a really interesting wood rail horse race game with the full-size cabinet. It does look a bit smaller from the pictures than Bally's horse race games. It's hard to tell if it is the same size or not. But what I can tell you is that it has a similar design with an arched cutout, and the stencil is lines and geometric shapes similar to the wood rail cabinets of the era. The front door is wooden with this awesome looking coin acceptor. I really like the coin acceptors on early payout games, and I really like the coin acceptors on horse race games in particular. And the coin acceptor on this Gottlieb New Daily Races is super interesting. It's big, it sticks out, and it looks like you can throw a bunch of money in there real quick. Now, the mechanism inside is pretty interesting, how it keeps the money and pays it back out. But I don't quite understand it from the pictures, so I'm not going to comment on that. Let's keep talking about the cabinet here. You've got dark stained trim on this cabinet all around the front, on the sides for the rails, and on the head. But on the sides of the cabinet and the front door of the cabinet, it is that stenciled wood. It's pretty attractive and different. It's distinct looking, I guess is what I would say. I think it looks pretty cool. It certainly looks unlike any other horse race game that I've seen. Now, the back glass. The artwork on this game was done by Roy Parker, the famous Gottlieb artist. And this artwork is pretty great. It's not done in his usual kind of cartoonish style that he came into in the 50s and 60s, really, and the late 40s. This is done in a different style. I've seen an example of his artwork that's kind of similar to this, that was a baseball theme, but I'm struggling to remember the title right now. At any rate, it shows Gottlieb's new at the top, and underneath, in arched 3D lettering, Daily Races sticks out. It doesn't actually physically stick out, it just gives the appearance because those letters fade in perspective. It's anyone who's drawn on their notebook probably understands what I'm talking about. But I guess the best thing would be to look at a photo of this back glass because it's cool. There are white sections that kind of resemble wings, which go on the left and right side underneath Daily Races. And then right in the center you have multiple, 1, 2, 3, or 4 odds. And then you have win, place, show, and purse with the odds listed right underneath of them. Now, there's something about this gameplay that I don't get, and I'm not sure how these odds interact, because when I read the scorecard, I said that you have your coin multiple, and I figured that had a direct correlation to the number of coins you put in. That can't be right, because your basic odds are 4 steps away from the max odds, not 3 steps. So that means either the scorecard is trying to tell you that you've already put in a coin before you read the scorecard, which is unlikely, or I don't understand something about the way the odds interact, which is much more likely. So the odds go from a max of 40 to a minimum of 2, and win, place, show, and purse has to do with the position that the horse makes it to in the race. So either they're first, second, third, or other. Now, the playfield on this, let's find a good picture here. Yeah. The playfield has purse up near the top with A and B bumpers, along with pins and the neat bingo spring bumpers, and some of the earlier 30s style bumpers, which are just unfurled springs that are only attached on one side. Now there are 7 different holes in each section, so you have purse with 7 holes, 1 for each horse, show with 7 holes, 1 for each horse, and in the show section, in the center, there is another passive bumper. Now this bumper has several different inserts underneath of it 2 of them are marked next A, B, C, D. Remember, the goal is to hit A, B, C, D in sequence, all on a single ball. It has paddock number 1 and paddock number 2. And it has special. Now, one of these is going to be lit at any given time, and if you hit that passive bumper, you're going to get that award. So that's pretty cool, but it's in the very center of the playfield, and you're likely to drop straight off of that into number 4 place, which is directly underneath of it almost. Now, in the show section, you have 2 horses with jockeys on either side of the playfield, and I do like the artwork surrounding each of the holes. It's actually different for each section. I think it's fairly attractive. The next section is place, as I mentioned, and you have the gate where the horse goes through down near the bottom, and it's drawn in more of a typical Parker style. And then near the bottom of the playfield you have win. Now, win has yet another style of 30 spring bumper surrounding each of the holes. So you have 1 through 7, and they have horseshoes. Traditional symbol of a horse race winner. And you have D. Gottlieb's signature right up above the win section. Now, everything has kind of a wood panel look, I suppose you would say. There's kind of that motif in both the back glass and the playfield artwork. And again, I think it's pretty attractive. Now, one thing I didn't mention is bumpers C and D are in the place section on the left and right, respectively. And there are a few posts around and some pins, and it looks like it would be pretty challenging to get it down to the win section, period, much less into the specific hole that you'd want it to go into. I would love to put a lot of time on a game like this and really figure out what I'm doing, because the game is going to, as I mentioned, randomly award you a horse to start with. You would think that would be pretty boring, because you have one shot and you have to make it into a specific number. But what I'll tell you is this game looks incredibly difficult. You have the numbers, as I mentioned several times, 1 through 7 in each section, but those numbers change position based on if you're in purse, show, place, or win. And trying to keep track of that while the ball is moving down and attempting to fall into a hole that you don't want it to go into would be very, very difficult indeed. Now, I do think if you spent some time on this game, you would find a way to win, and the game would be pretty darn fun, I think. I think figuring out what it takes to win on this game would be pretty darn fun. So, I mentioned earlier in the show that there was a unique mechanism, and what I was talking about was really a serviceability thing. Gottlieb included several swing-out wooden panels with the mechanisms on them. It doesn't have the interior panel that slides out like on the Bally's, but these panels will actually flip sideways and allow you to work on them without fear of messing anything up. I think that is pretty neat. I do like Bally's system better, but this obviously has less of a footprint, and so there's an advantage there. But for those of you who may be listening in Ohio or the region, this gentleman has one for sale, and they certainly don't come up very often. It is in pretty darn good shape from what I can see, and I hope somebody goes in and talks to him and hopefully gets the game. If you do, I would love to hear about it. And if he was in Virginia, it would already be in my house, I think. But this game holds a very unique place in history because Gottlieb was so staunchly opposed to gambling pinball, apparently after this one was produced. And that's not to say that they didn't experiment with things which are similar in concept. It's just that they didn't actually pay out after this game. And having the horse race theme, I think, is really interesting because obviously it was very successful for Bally. So I'm wondering how much of this was a competition thing and attempting to kind of cash in on some of that. But as I say, it is an attractive game, and it looks like it's a lot of fun, actually. And I say this without ever having played a one ball, but it sure looks like it would be challenging. And once you figured out whatever the skills were that were necessary to play one of these fairly consistently, I think it would be pretty great. Now, one thing that's a little interesting is I mentioned earlier that it's adjustable from 1 to 5 ball. I am not certain if there's a way to disable that skill lane and allow for all 5 balls to be played. My guess is no, because then it would have to keep track of multiple payouts. And I'm not certain if this has the ability to do that. Perhaps it does. I would love to know that as well. Well, that's all for tonight. That's enough of my musing about something I don't really know anything about. As I say, I'll post some pictures up on Facebook and Instagram, and I hope you all get a chance to take a look. This is certainly an intriguing one-ball horse race game, and there are many. So I'll be talking about more of those in the future. But for now, this is Gottlieb's New Daily Races, made in 1947. Thank you very much for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram at nbaldridge, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.